morning. It's Wednesday, May 1st, 2019. This is Progressive News with Martin Drummond. And I'm trying to make sense out of the Syria thing. I have been since I lived in Lebanon. You know, when I lived in Lebanon, the Palestinians and the Syrians were often working together in Beirut to, each other's mutual advantage, I guess. And I could never really understand what was going on. Damascus was always some desert town far away that, as a person living in Lebanon, I didn't even want to think about. Didn't really want to have anything to do with. Didn't understand it back then. Didn't know what a Ba'athist was. But, so you've got the Russians that are hell-bent on keeping Bashar al-Assad in power. Don't even ask what that's all about. I have no idea. So, where were we? We were here. So, right here, obviously, from what it says here, Russia and that they're just bombing the living shit. These are civilians. These are civilian towns. These are what's left of Sunni Syria, which is Sunnis were massively and still are, even despite 14 million of them being forced out of the country, and now they're all jam-packed in this area right here, Idlib. You hear about Idlib, but you may not actually realize where it is. It's just this. Okay, so you have 25 million Syrians, or had, and now you've got they were forced out into Europe, made it to about here. A lot of them that went on to Germany, and now they're all being pushed back. The ones in Lebanon are all being pushed back because nobody wants them, right? I mean, they're an undue burden upon an already horrible economic system in Lebanon and Greece, you name it, anywhere that they're at. And so, and Germany acts like it's so pro-immigrant. Well, they announced last year that they're telling the immigrants to go home. Go home to this, by the way. This is a little piece that I did. 95 detainees executed. So, Bashar al-Assad feels comfortable now to round up. He's already rounded up a bunch of them and put them in jail, but he'll round up more and execute them. It's basically a mass execution, or a massacre, a genocide, whatever you want to call it. It's a horror. It's a horror. And I have my group that you ought to check out. I'm just trying to document the reality. I'm not, I'm pro-Syrian because I'm trying to protect the Syrian people in my own little way, right? So, what I'm trying to figure out here is, how Turkey and the Kurds over here, and the Kurds in Turkey, and the United States and Russia, how it all really fits together, how it all washes out. By the way, this is a 24-hour period, so you're talking a lot of bombs. Yeah. A lot of horror. I don't know how to, because I don't really think that I even understand it, but there's got to be, for individuals on the ground. I mean, the whole thing's got to be a horror, right? I mean, you've got all these attacks, all these bombings, all these mortars, all these rockets, and all this stuff going on. And in the meantime, you've had the entire population forced into this area, so they're going to all be piling into these towns, right? Like here, where they're bombing. All these millions of Syrians are going to be piling into these towns, and with them are going to be coming, yes, the foreign fighters, Al-Qaeda, ISIS. Here, so they're all crammed into. This is exactly like the book by Frank Herbert, the Saudi experiment, which is a experiment where they unknowingly to the people put the people in a situation that was horrible, so that they could, through survival of the fittest, they could produce some kind of super warrior or something like that, I think, and super politician. And they did. But it got loose and it destroyed the people who were doing the experiment. That's kind of like what terrorism is. Because between all of us, the Turks, the Americans, the Russians, we produce, through a little Saudi experiment, we produce these people who, through survival of the fittest, they're vicious, they're dangerous, and you know what, I gotta say that I think Russia, way off over here somewhere, right? I don't very often criticize the Russians, because I think they're, my dad, he was working for U.S. intelligence. He said, even though he raised from here, where we live, in Tehran, which is right over here, he worked with Osama bin Laden. He recruited Osama bin Laden to raise the Mujahideen to fight in Afghanistan, to run the Russians out. But my dad told me once at the time that the Russians had it right. That the Russians were afraid of, this is way back in the 70s that he figured this stuff out, that the Russians were afraid of, and because they have all this area, they've since supposedly released it, but because the Soviet Union doesn't exist. But that's not really true, because if you come into these countries and you look at the names of the mayors and the governors, they're all Russian. So what they did was they consolidated their power so well that they no longer needed to have the actual countries under their control. but at the same time, because they were trying to make peace, or at least on paper, peace with America, the Americans come in and start working their magic too, right? So you got all kinds of shit going on. But my point is that my dad said that the Russians understood the danger of Islamic terrorism, and that they actually knew what they were doing in Afghanistan, that they were trying to keep these fundamentalists down, you know. Well, my dad is wrong. Was wrong. The way to end terrorism and the way to get the violence down is not to crush them, but to find a way to educate them and bring them into the fold, bring them into the world community. Eventually, over time, they will calm down and relax and stop. I mean, we're just, you know, I've said this in one of my other segments. Well, what do we want to do? Do we want to just bomb them into submission? How many millions of them do you guys plan on killing? Because the way I look at it, because here's America, right? And America's over here in Iraq, and America's down here in Jordan, you know, etc., etc., etc. What is this? Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia. So we're all over, right? And Russia's here, but when I look at, I mean, let's just look at it objectively, right? So let's just look at the facts. You've got, the United States just got done, more or less, killing what it says is ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and yet you've got Baghdadi on video yesterday coming out. You know, so ISIS may not exist on a map anymore, but it still exists. It's millions and millions of Sunnis trying to protect their interests. But you've got, between the Russians and Assad and the Kurds in the United States and other places and the Russians in other places, what you've got is a massive war upon the Sunni. And nobody asked us if we wanted to fight this war. You know, did the American people want to fight this war? Do the Russian people want to fight this war? And do we have to fight this war? Could we not make peace with radical Islam? Who says that radical Islam would be so radical if somebody would just give them the time of day, you know? Nobody gives them the time of day. Everybody just wants to kill them all. You know, this is Russia bombing them. And just because we're in a lull right here, you don't see it, but I could go back. Time, let's go back to January. Okay, this is the United States and the Kurds, and we fought them all the way from Raqqa, which, if you go here and you look, you'll find out that so this is Amnesty International's, you can just see right there the terror, right? This is a school that we bombed. killed a bunch of children. So, you know, and you can go, if you want to know exactly where this is, just pause the video right here and type this all in. It's probably a lot easier just to look up Amnesty International. If you do a Google, it'll take you right to this very quickly. So, you know, what I'm saying is the United States and Russia all attacking the Sunni. The Sunni Muslims, except for like if you want to look at it from the point of view of, you know, are the Sunni armed? Yeah, we arm them in Saudi Arabia. They're well armed in over here in Pakistan with nuclear weapons. But what can I tell you, man? I hate Islam. I mean, I don't hate Islam. I hate religion. I think it's stupid. I think it's ridiculous. You know, people believing in mythology like that. But these are people, man. I mean, these are people. And from here into Iraq, and then of course down in Saudi Arabia, and then you got the Shia here in Iran, and then you go back to Sunnis in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and probably all through these different stands, Kazakhstan, and then of course Russia is dealing with the Chechnya thing, right? Chechnya is still part of Russia. So what I'm saying is right here, these Sunnis from Syria to Iraq, okay, they don't have planes, sometimes they do manage to build up ground forces with tanks and stuff, but not very often. I mean, usually they're limited to explosives, packing trucks, vans, cars full of explosives, and then driving them into the enemy and blowing themselves up. And they rely a lot on foreign fighters because most of the people, most of the 22 million Sunnis in Syria and I don't know how many millions of Sunnis in Iraq were just a bunch of farmers. I mean, they had to accept Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, of course, and ISIS and IS fighters to help protect them. I mean, they had no battle experience. They had nothing. You know, it was just some of the military from Iraq that tried to help him. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that, you know, I think you have to weigh it. You know, how many millions of these Sunnis are we going to have to kill and oppress, torture, in order to get them as a people to back down and rejoin the community? And is that even possible when they're being oppressed by their own people, basically. So Bashar al-Assad, under pressure from the Russians, oppressing these people constantly. Go back to today's map. So you've got him weekly executing them. How friendly. You know, in that situation, you can never make friends with these people. They're always going to want to, you're creating a situation where they have nothing to lose. So of course you're going to fight. You know? And if you don't understand that, you haven't watched any of the, and you have no common sense, because the videos I've seen, the people, the Sunni people in here, when al-Nusra and ISIS and all this stuff came in here and threw these bastards, Bashar al-Assad's people, out, you can talk to any of them when they're not under Syrian control, when they feel free to say what they really want. And they were so happy. Oh God, we didn't have to worry about fucking fascism that hates them, you know. I mean, it's one thing if it's your own fascism, you know. If you were a Nazi in Germany, you didn't get too worried about, you know, Nazi fascism, although I would say fascism always turns on its own people. So, what I'm saying is Russia and probably the United States create the situation where we can't pursue peace. Because these people don't want to pursue peace. They're like, why should we make peace with you when you allow your governments to annihilate us and create war? And you know what, I got to agree with them. You know, the American people like me who want to make peace, are at odds with our own government, who do just whatever they want. And who's right? Are our governments right? Are they really protecting us from these Sunni Muslims? Are these Sunni Muslims really just that far gone beyond any kind of redemption in terms of peace with the American people and the Russian people, the European people, and India and all these different places? I mean, are they really that much of a pariah? Because I don't even see them as ever being that much of a pariah until after we bombed the shit out of them and we created the Saudi experiment that produced Al-Qaeda. You know, when my dad was working with Osama bin Laden to raise the Mujahideen to send to Afghanistan, none of this existed. There was no Al-Qaeda, there was no Saudi fundamentalist, terrorists, anything like that. It all happened after. It started with the radicalization in Afghanistan and the training camps and stuff, and Osama, you know, just deciding I guess he and his people, I don't even know how much of it was him, but Al-Qaeda in general is not one person, that's for sure. So it all started with I'm going to assume that even though we don't know about it, because I've never heard anything about it, but I'm going to hypothesize here that these people like Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan, when the Taliban ruled Afghanistan, I'm going to assume that they came under pressure. And I know that obviously they were under pressure when they were fighting the Russians, right? By the Russians. But I'm going to say that all over the Middle East, this new Al-Qaeda kind of influence came under a lot of pressure. I mean, we know that Bill Clinton attempted to murder Osama. I'm going to assume that may not have been murder, but there was no trial, is what I'm saying. But we did try to nuke him. And no, not with nukes. I mean, we tried to use Tomahawk missiles. We hit the training camps in Afghanistan. So, how far back does this war between Osama bin Laden and the United States go? That's a great question. I would like to know the answer to. You know, maybe I can go read the wiki a little closer on Osama bin Laden. So Osama bin Laden, bin Laden's father. See, my dad said that he was doing business with them on a regular basis, and what I really know is that, not too hard to figure out, is he was developing a relationship with all of these Saudis because the United States wanted him to raise the Mujahideen to go to Afghanistan and fight the Russians. In fact, just to look out for American interests in Saudi. My father developed the relationship between Saudi Arabia and the United States. When first Saudis did it, like the guy that my dad started out with, and that's Isam Khashoggi, Adnan Khashoggi's younger brother. Oh, this is interesting. Osama bin Laden's mother, Alia Ghanim, was from a secular middle-class family based in Latakia, Syria. So Osama's mother was actually of the same ilk as Bashir al-Assad. Now they say Mohammed bin Laden was a Saudi billionaire, but I happen to know the bin Laden family So the bin Laden family, I happen to know, is from Yemen, and I think that it's no coincidence that we're trying to crush the Yemenis. See, in Yemen. So I always think of this connection here because Osama's family is really from Yemen, And why are we bombing the shit out? Why are the Saudis bombing the shit out of Yemen? Okay, that being said, let's go back to Osama and try and figure out when exactly he went rogue from the CIA or whatever you want to call it. Actually, my dad, I would say technically my dad was military intelligence, army intelligence, because that's where he originated from. So, Saudi millionaire. Born in Saudi Arabia, studied at a university in the country until '79. And I met Osama bin Laden in 78, 79, I'm not sure. Actually, I had started college and then left college in Oxford and gone to, and I was in college, and so 79, 80, I met him. My father had obviously already developed this relationship with him, and I was on a plane from California to Saudi Arabia. I stopped in New York, and I got on the plane to, I think, Riyadh, and I was in the back of a 747. There's a back section and the tail section, and just me and him, and they seated us right next to each other in an empty section. This is why I know that my dad set it up, or his handler, intelligence, whether it was my dad personally or not, I don't know. But they put us together side by side, and isn't that a dead giveaway that it was a setup? So they put us together in the tail section, me and him. And by the way, he didn't have a beard like that back then. But he did get up in the middle of the flight and go change into Saudi garb. This isn't really Saudi stuff. This is probably how he dressed in Afghanistan and stuff. But he got up. He was in a gray suit when he got on the plane. He looked kind of geeky. I think he had a little bit of a beard, but nothing like this. And he was very tall, and I liked him. You know, we started talking, and at that time, his name meant nothing to me. You know, he told me his name was Osama, blah blah blah, and I was like, oh, nice to meet you, and we talked. I mean, we were on a long flight, and I think the people who put us side by side, I mean, in the, I wonder what the in-flight movie was, because we did watch the movie. I don't remember anymore. So anyway, you know, on the flight, at some point, he said, well, I live, you know, in Dhahran too. Or they at least had a house there, him and his brother. Would you like to come over? So the next day, after I got settled in Dhahran, Al-Khobar, my driver drove me down. He was about a mile down towards town from where we were living. And I sat down with him and his brother. Saudi houses, at least this one, is very sparse. I mean, it was quite a large room that we were in, that they let me in the front. And by the way, I noticed immediately that the doors locked from the outside. I mean, they locked their women in. It's a bizarre culture, I gotta admit that. And, you know, in this quite large room with windows that are real high, because they don't want men looking in through the windows. So it's not like American houses where you can see into the house. Matter of fact, even our house was like that. There was no way to see in from the outside. Not like American houses where you can walk by the front window and, you know, if you wanted to be a peeping Tom, you certainly could be. You'd have to get up on something to look in these windows, and you'd look down into a dark room. So we're sitting in this dark room, and we're sitting on cushions around a little wooden table where he served us a red tea with sugar. They didn't offer milk or cream or anything. And so we're drinking this hot sweet tea and talking about stuff. And all I remember really out of it is a couple of things, and that's that the women were at the doorway to the room, on one side of the room, and looking at me and checking me out. Obviously, they had all the time in the world to check out Osama and his brother. And I don't remember which brother it was, if it was Salim or one of the other brothers that I've heard about. I don't know. I mean, I imagine he had a lot of brothers. But I always figured it was probably Salim because I heard that they were, you know, kind of two sides of the same coin. But so they started kind of pressuring me. I wouldn't say pressuring, but strongly suggesting that I go out to this club that, how did he describe it? He said that they were a different kind of Saudi, that all the guys that he was friends with were a different kind of Saudi, and he never really explained what that meant. In retrospect, I have to think, especially from what I know about Sunni Muslims. See, they have the ones that people like me would run into had two sides, because on one side they're fundamentalist Islamists, right? They kind of, in their own way, believe very firmly in, you know, the destruction of Palestine and Arab rule, that kind of thing, strength, Arab strength. But on the other hand, they've been influenced by being in America and stuff. A lot of them drink and party and try to have a good time. And a lot of them have a conflict between these two sides, you know? Gee, I'm fundamentalist Muslim in a way, but I'm also, you know, going out with my American friends and dropping acid and drinking alcohol and doing all kinds of stuff and being influenced in a way, you know, to kind of understand. Because if they were friends with people like me, then they were influenced by, they understood that all Americans aren't conservative fascists, neocons, right? So they had to be, so that creates a conflict in them, you know? I mean, I had my best friend, a Pakistani guy named, and he's still my friend. It's just that he's disappeared for years now. But I know where he's at, kind of, through his father. And, you know, we used to party all the time. We had a band together and everything. But then one day we're sitting there, and it's like after a whole night of partying, and the next morning we're hanging around, you know, after tripping on something. I think it was some kind of mescaline, because we were in Houston. You didn't get real acid. And he just kind of out of the blue says, you know, well, how could we get rid of Israel, you know? And I'm like, even back then, you know, this is probably in 84, 85, 86, somewhere, after I've been friends with them for several years. And we did nothing. We never talked about the Middle East or anything. All we did was we went to college together, and like many people back then, we had a rock band, and matter of fact, a lot of this music that you're listening to, we used to play together, and he played guitar and drums and stuff like that. And he just kind of all of a sudden started talking about the destruction of Israel, and I suddenly realized that even though we had been through all this years of being just typical American friends, that's where he was from. And so he said, well, what if we just nerve gassed them all? And I said, well, Assad, they have nuclear weapons, and they would nuke everything. You know, they would nuke Cairo, they would nuke where Pakistan, they'd nuke Karachi and all these, you know, centers. And he was like, and he still pursued it. You know, he was like, well, could we do this? Could we do that? And in the end, I just kept on impressing upon him. And I didn't know it, but, you know, I'm sitting there. This is how terrorism begins, right? People sitting around talking about what they could do, or what their country could do to stop Israel. And while we get away from the Israeli question, it is the center of all of this. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of other stuff around it. There's Arab sovereignty. You know, Bin Laden was promoting Arab sovereignty. He didn't want American troops anywhere in the Arabian Peninsula. You know, I've read his stuff. I understand what he was saying. And actually, there was nothing that important. I mean, it was kind of like what an American would believe about America. You know, we don't want any Russian troops within, you know, the Monroe Doctrine. We don't want any foreign troops anywhere except for ours. We want, you know, if we have troops and everything in South America, Canada, whatever, no problem. But nobody else can have it. Well, they have the same kind of feelings about their country, and you know, and I often wonder, well, would I revert to terrorism to protect my country? Right? So, would I get 20 guys together and hijack planes and crash them into, you know, what do they have in Moscow, the Kremlin, and their biggest office tower, and their head of intelligence? You know, would I do like a 9/11 on Russia if the whole thing was turned around, right? and I was like kind of an American terrorist. Would I? Would I? You know, if I had nothing to lose, if I was watching my parents and my sisters, my brothers and my cousins and my uncle all die one at a time, and you know, I had all this money, would I do it? I don't know, because I've never been in that situation. I tell myself that I would. But how do you know until you're in that situation what you would do, right? I know that I'm oppressed by my own government, but I never would do anything. I would rather die than kill civilians, innocent or not, you know. And that's why I look at like Al-Nusra and stuff. When you look at on here, and we call people terrorists, but you have to look at who they're attacking. So Al-Nusra, who we hear over and over again in Syria, is a terrorist organization. The only reason that I've ever found that they call Al-Nusra a terrorist organization is that they took in one member of Al-Qaeda who fled Afghanistan because the United States was raising hell there, and ended up in Syria. And he was just some guy, medium level. You know, he wasn't an Osama bin Laden or I forget the other guy's name. The guy was never caught, and we don't know where he is. He's still out there operating. And so Al-Nusra said, well, yeah, sure, you know, you're here in Syria, we're fighting this massive civil war, and let's take the map back a little bit. And let's do it in a different tab. So, I mean, there was a time, and the map doesn't go back that far anymore, but I'll go back to the very beginning. See, the map doesn't go back far enough. It only goes back 2 years ago. But there was a time when almost this whole map was Islamic State. It was like all gray like this. All through here, all down through here, all this area, all through here. They had pretty much taken over most of the country, all over here too, with the United States. I mean, this has changed radically. And I don't think there's any way to go back that far anymore. Oh, okay, here we go. You gotta pay. Okay. So now they're charging money for the older. So that's silly. Anyway, my point being that if you go back far enough, there was a time when Al-Nusra and the rebels, the Syrian people, controlled most of this. And so they had the ability to, you know, protect different people. They took in one guy from Al-Qaeda. Now Al-Nusra and the Syrian people who were fighting, not the foreign fighters, not Al-Qaeda, not anything like that, because there were Al-Qaeda in the country, but they weren't under the banner of Al-Nusra. Now, were there Al-Nusra that supported the ideology? Of course there were. You know, the ideology was simply to try to stop everybody from fucking with their country. Of course there were millions of Al-Nusra and Syrians who had the ideology, but were they members of Al-Qaeda? No, there was one member of Al-Qaeda that they said they would protect, you know. But then they had a falling out, and he ended up getting pushed out of al-Nusra, and he ended up dying in either an American attack or something else. So these people, the Syrian people who fought and who are now, if we go back to the original map, now dying in prisons, they're not terrorists, not as far as the United States is concerned, or Europe for that matter. I mean, they're Iraqis from that call themselves Iraq, but they're actually ISIL, Islamic State in the Levant, which they were radicalized by fighting with the United States and then forced into Syria and now forced back into Iraq, and most of them are dead. But apparently Baghdadi's still alive. He put out a video yesterday. I saw it. I mean, it's all over the media. And by the way, I have nothing to do with any Shia Muslims at all, or Sunni Muslims at all. Matter of fact, I don't even know any Muslims anymore. I mean, I talk to people in different countries. Like, I have a friend in Pakistan who, I don't know really who he is or anything, but I like to pick his brain every chance I get. And people like that, you know, people who I try to stay in contact with because they're sources of information. You never know what they might be able to tell you. And what I talk to them about is mostly just kind of cultural issues. So I'll talk to them, well, what's it like being in Peshawar or wherever they're at in these little, you know, these places that we only hear about in news because a bomb went off or there was a terrorist attack or something. And I'll talk to them about, you know, what they're doing in school and whether they're afraid and stuff like that, because it gives me insight into what's going on. You know, I want to know about their daily lives. I want to know about how what I'm hearing in the news, how it affects them and how they feel. So that's my, when I talk about my relationship.
Going out of business, huh? Yeah. Get some video before they close.
Let me just
get your some silly dream.
So when I talk about you know, I mean, yes, I have old friends, but I've pretty much broken off, like, friends of my family. I used to know the people who my dad worked with, and the Khashoggis, and the Ali Rizzas, and all these people. But I think really the situation, the war in the Middle East, all the different wars, I think that they stressed those people out because at some point they became hard to deal with. You know, they couldn't take a joke, or they couldn't, and I just blew them off, you know. And they weren't talking to me about anything important anyway. I think most of them fear using social media or email or anything to talk about anything that's important. And really, you know, if you're going to have friends, what's the point of being friends if you don't want to talk about anything important? I couldn't deal with that. So, you know, they may be friends with mine on Facebook or here or there, or you have email addresses that I have and stuff, but I haven't talked to them in years because even the Khashoggis, who I'm like a member of their family, you know, what's the point? They avoid anything of interest. They don't talk about anything of interest or express their feelings or anything. So I get more valuable information and understanding, which that's what I look to in a friend. You know, are you going to share with me how you really feel, even if it means we fight about it? I don't care about that, but if you're a true friend, you know, you tell me how you feel. You tell me what's happened. You know, did you see something, bombing or action of any kind? That's what friends do. They talk to them about the serious things in life. But everybody's so afraid that they might get, I don't know, arrested or attacked because of the, you know. I suppose if I had the money to fly and go to all these places, then I do from time to time, like I spent 2 years in Brussels. Not too long ago. Anyway, this whole thing is kind of blown up into a situation where it's very hard to maintain relationships with personal friends. So, you know, I do my best to make friends with people in all around this area who aren't my personal friends anymore, because at least then I can find out shit. You know, like I say, you know, I can find out your everyday life, you know, what it's like to get up in the morning, have breakfast, where do you go to school, do you go to work, what do you do? Now, those are the kind of things that they may not seem like they are important, but having an idea about those kind of things does aid me a lot in my understanding of the details of what's going on here.
I'll put that up on YouTube and tell everybody.
Because when these wars occur,
that's the guy right there.
those everyday lives, that's what's thrown out, right? That's what's destroyed.
Scott, how long was this place open? How long was this place open?
At least 70 years.
70 years?
Okay, well, so what you've been listening to is me hashing through my mind all the information that I have, trying to figure out,
doing that one, huh?
you know, what's really going on in here. It's very hard to do. It's very hard to try to figure out. Maybe there isn't any real objective way of viewing this, because there's just so many individual people, and each of them probably has their reasons and their you know, it's about survival, it's about will people trying to make things the way that they want them to be. You know, whether you've got the Alawites trying to make things the way they want it to be, whether you have the Russians trying to make things the way they want it to be, whether it's the Americans or the Kurds or the Turks, the Jordanians, the Lebanese, you know, all these people trying to make the Middle East in their image, you know, that they want to create of it. So maybe that's the way that I should look at it, as a place that's being torn apart by the will of all these different people, right? They all have wills, and they're all trying to do whatever they can to make their will the strongest influence over the reality. So, I guess that's the way I'm going to look at it for a little while, is all these different wills and their effect upon reality. And they're all tearing the whole place apart with their wills. I think the solution would be that you would have to get all these people to get together and compromise on their wills to try and come up with a single will that they could all live with, right? That's right. Well, that would be my way of looking at it, if I were to try to come up with a solution to all this nonsense that's going on everywhere. And I think it's unfair. Oh, excuse me. I really do think it's unfair that the will of people way over here and way over here. I mean, I think we should limit it to the will of the people right around here, and we should make Europe and the United States and Russia and, you know, the whole rest of the world. I think we should force them to kind of stay out of it, and certainly fighting over resources, I think that should be all pushed out of the equation and not allowed to re-enter. So, you know, it's alright. It's alright. Yeah, I don't see how that helps in any way in trying to get people to stop killing each other. And then, you know, one other aspect that I have to throw in is the lack of resources. The inability to feed your own people, hunger in Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, all these places, and shitty lifestyles that create despair. Because really, when you get right down to it, even though there's all these different factors in the Syrian civil war, what it really came down to was people were starving, and the farmers were losing their land, and losing their crops and everything. A battle over water. And that's where it all started, and then you end up with the kids spraying anti-Bashir al-Assad or whatever stuff on the wall with spray paint, and they get arrested and tortured, and then you end up with people marching in the streets, and then you end up with the Syrian government troops firing upon the marchers, and then all of a sudden you have the Syrian people forcing the Assad's police thugs army out of the area so that they could not avoid being attacked. Then you get Assad bombing them with barrel bombs and stuff. You know, I mean, that's pretty much, I mean, that is a realistic view of what happened as far as this war. But then, you get all of America, Russia, pipelines, and, you know, oil, and you get Turkey. There's a definite link between shipping oil out of the Kurdish-controlled areas in Turkey, and what's his name's son making all kinds of money off of tanking oil out of this area into Turkey, and so that's, it's all relevant. And as such, I'd say that what I just said is right, is that you have to get all of that out of it, out of the conversation. Can you do that? I'm not really sure you can do that. You know, I'm trying to think in terms of, obviously the people who would be trying to create a peace in this area are failing. So, you know, I'm trying to do, like, if I were them, what I would do. So maybe before you do anything else, you're going to have to solve the bigger picture first, and come up with the agreement on who's going to get oil and who's not going to get oil, and come up with something that is fair to, you know, you would think that it would have more to do with what's fair to the people who are living on top of those resources, but it rarely comes down to that, because it's a capitalist thing, and comes down to the people who have taken control of those resources. And of course that's an inherent problem, isn't it? We end up coming all the way around 360 degrees back to money and capitalism. And as such, you say, well, is that the source? Possibly. I mean, it's funny, while I'm trying to figure all this out, I'm vacillating from totally negative to very positive. But sometimes I just, you know, it's overwhelming, all the factors. And I get overwhelmed, and I'm just like, you know, I don't know if I would ever even want to be involved, even if I felt like, you know, I could be of a positive influence. But you look at it and it's just so hopeless. Sometimes you just lose all hope. But at the same time, I look at it sometimes and I feel like, you know, maybe I could figure this out. Maybe I could work with people in my way, which is very honest and open, and try and get them to you know, see a way to the light, so to speak. But I don't know. I don't know whether I could or not. And I kind of doubt I could. Because dealing with people is so crazy, right? You never know what you're going to be dealing with. But at the same time, I look at people and I say, well, it doesn't really matter who they are. Almost any of them, if you can communicate with them properly, you know, through an interpreter or whatever, will have the same values as everybody else. They have more in common than they do differences, and their differences are just polar opposites. which means they believe the same things, but they're trying to project their particular group, right? Well, I doubt anybody's going to give me the opportunity to try to produce peace between these people anyway, so it's not like it really matters, but I like to think about it. This is Martin Drummond with Progressive News. I don't think I learned anything, but I hope that you did. Maybe maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I mean, I continuously hash this out in the hope that I'm gonna find something new, and not really. Still coming to the same conclusion, still coming to the same chaos and hopeless situation.